Portland political activism has a new medium. Yay! Embroidered public telephone pole art. Shanley Hampton has stapled over 100 embroidered phrases and quotes all over town, recently with a strong anti-Second Amendment message. On Tuesday, August 20th, 2019, former Labor Secretary Robert Reich even shared one of her pieces, a white sheet with red capital letters that reads, "Who in your life would have to die from gun violence in order for you to care about gun control?" on his Facebook page, which has 2.8 million followers. Shanley, who is from Chicago but has lived in Portland for 10 years, was inspired to do political art after the 2014 Supreme Court Hobby Lobby decision, which said that the government cannot force companies with religious objections to pay for the insurance coverage of the contraception of their employees. Portland City Code states that it is illegal to post signs, bills, advertisements, or other notices on city-owned telecommunications equipment, streetlight poles, traffic signal systems, signal control boxes, and sign poles. But despite this article by the Oregonian, where Shanley admits doing this over 100 times, let's just say I have my doubts she's going to ever face any legal repercussions. Now, as for the messages of her gun control art pieces, 39,773 people were killed by guns in 2018. First of all, she got the year wrong. That number was from 2017, not 2018, per the CDC. With how long embroidery takes, you think maybe she would have taken an extra 5 seconds to double-check the veracity of her stupid assertion. Secondly, anyone with even a passing knowledge of gun violence will be able to tell you that the number of gun deaths includes suicides by gun, which reliably account for around 2/3 of the total number of gun deaths every year. For instance, per the CDC, the firearm suicide total for 2017 was 23,854, which means that suicides comprise 60% of all the gun deaths that year. As for her sign reading, "Who in your life would have to die from gun violence in order for you to care about gun control?" I'm going to seriously answer this question for myself. My grandfather was a sheriff's deputy working in Ventura County, California in the mid to late 1960s. You know that scene in Quentin Tarantino's new movie Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, where Brad Pitt goes up to Spahn Ranch and makes sure that George Spahn is okay and the Manson family isn't living on his property against his will? My grandfather actually did that. He got a call that no one had seen George Spahn in months, and there were a bunch of hippies living up there, and my grandfather had to go make sure everything was copacetic. Why do I mention this? Because in my immediate family, I have a connection to one of the most shocking stories of random home invasion and multiple murders in U.S. history. Also in my family, my uncle was sleeping over at his girlfriend's house one night when the ex-boyfriend of hers broke into their house, shot them both, and then burned their house to the ground. They found the ex-boyfriend on the side of the road with his head blown off a few hours later. I'm not saying my uncle having a gun in the house would have definitely saved their lives, but it certainly couldn't have hurt their chances. Lastly, just my personal story. I grew up in one of the most affluent and crime-free neighborhoods in the United States, in Southern California. After college, I got a job at Stanford University. Out of my incredible naivete and desire to save as much money as possible, I ended up signing a 1-year lease for an apartment in the absolute ghetto of East Palo Alto, California. One night, I went on a date which only lasted around 2 hours. When I returned home, my apartment door had been kicked in by God knows who, and my apartment had been burgled and trashed. I still have no idea why they thought I'd have anything worth stealing. Go figure. It was a sobering realization for me that if I had been home when they had started breaking in, there's a good possibility that I would have been in the unenviable position to have to defend my life from an unknown number of criminals, potentially with weapons of their own. I moved out of East Palo Alto as soon as humanly possible, breaking my lease in the process. Then I moved to an apartment in San Francisco where I started living with a couple. The girlfriend was the breadwinner of the relationship. The boyfriend was just some big dumb asshole who couldn't hold down more than a seasonal job and smoke pot all day. They had loud arguments periodically in the first few months after I moved in. Then one night, as I was in my room, I hear them arguing more heatedly than ever before. Then I hear what I think is him striking her in the face. Then her head hitting a wall, and then her head hitting the floor. She's sobbing on the ground, begging him to stop hitting her, telling him that she loves him. Bear in mind, this boyfriend of hers is significantly bigger than I am. He's drunk, and he's pissed off enough to beat the shit out of a woman. And I have a pistol in my room. What would you do? I grabbed it and walked out of my room into the hallway where he stood looming over her. With my pistol sticking out of the front of my waistband, I tell him to get the fuck out, and if he comes back, I'd call the cops and he'd be cooling his heels in a jail cell. Maybe I saved the girlfriend from serious injuries or even being murdered that night. I sort of doubt it. Anyway, she didn't break up with him after that, and I moved out immediately because she told me he was moving back in. A few months later, I ended up seeing her on the OkCupid dating app, so I want to believe she dumped his broke ass and decided to date higher quality guys. You know, let's hope. So if, like in the embroidery artist's question, my parents were shot by criminals, if my wife, if my brother, if anyone I love was shot to death or killed themselves with a gun, would any of that negate my hard-earned belief that violence is often random, and I have not only the moral and legal right to protect myself and others with guns, but the moral duty to do so? Abso-fucking-lutely not. These arguments are absurd. That the deaths by gun suicide won't in the vast majority of cases just be transmuted to successful suicides by other means is nothing short of wishful thinking. That the idea that murderous criminals will find it too difficult to get their hands on illegally purchased firearms if we enacted whatever gun control laws the left is asking for this week, in a country with 390 million firearms in the hands of private citizens today, is just a fantasy. As if there aren't already felons that somehow magically get their hands on guns reliably without having to buy them legally at stores.
Who knows what evil lurks in the hearts of men? The Shadow knows.
Hi guys, Media Shadow here. I'm trying to grow the channel and hopefully get more than one video out a week. So if you like what you've seen, please give me a like, subscribe, share, or drop me some coin on Patreon. I've left a link in the description of the video. Thanks!